Lesson 40, when DNA goes bad. We'll be able to explain how mutations affect the body. So mutations are an interesting thing. Obviously, yeah, mutations and how mutations link to DNA. Now, mutations. Does anyone know what a mutation is? Can anyone tell me what does the word mutation generally mean?
When something changes into something else.
Yeah, it's when
Yeah, in like a bad way.
Usually in a bad way, but actually it doesn't always have to be in a bad way. So yeah, a mutation is when
In science, isn't it the change of the structure?
Yeah, so mutations are when you've got like, yeah, it's something where you would normally have something go one way, but then it goes a different way instead. So it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but usually when we look at modern DNA, it's usually not exactly what we want it to be. So yeah, mutations are not a great thing to happen. So where did we come from before we got to this? Let's just go take a quick step back just to grab a quick look at a revision to see what we were studying. So last time I spoke to you guys, we talked about DNA structure. We said DNA has multiple parts. We imagine that a DNA is like it's made in a double helix. The reason it's called a double helix is because it's got two strands, a left and a right rail or rung, or what we refer to them as backbone. And then what happens is it's got these bridges that connect the two rungs together. Now we know that the backbone is made up of something called a phosphate and a sugar. And this phosphate sugar repeats over and over and over again. And that's why we refer to it as a polymer, because it is
So do we copy?
No, you should have got this from last lesson. Don't worry.
Okay. Oh, yeah. All right.
This is just a refresher of what we did last time. And then we said that you've also got a base. And together, the three of these things make up something called a nucleotide. And the reason that I'm saying that it's called a nucleotide is because it might say, it might give you a question, well, what is a nucleotide? What are the parts of this nucleotide? Yeah. So phosphate and sugar. And then we moved on to talking about this base. Well, actually, before we did that, we looked at this. So we said, here is the sugar phosphate backbone, is this long section here. And in the middle, we've got these bases. Now, these bases, we actually then looked at, have certain names. There are 4 different types of bases.
I don't think we did this.
We did.
You weren't here, Zane.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, shoot. No, my bad.
Zane, you were in the middle of Batman, I think, weren't you?
Oh, yeah, my bad.
You may have missed it. So that's why the reason I go through it is for people, for Zane, people like you. So even though you missed it, you can be like, oh, pick up the basics. So the basics here is that there are 4 types of these bases: adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. Now, you might think those names are really complicated, and they are pretty complicated, but ultimately, all you need to know is that their bases can be represented as A, T, and CG. So that's the main way. Come on, circle. Why not? Why you no circle? Come on. Here you go. A, circle, A, T, and CG. And they're the 4 bases that you need to worry about. Now, it just so happens that not only these bases exist, but they also exist in pairs. AT always bonds together, and CG always bonds together. And so you'll need to come up with some way to memorize this. I suggested that you go Apple Tree Car Garage or Adventure Time, because, you know, I love Adventure Time. Come on, come go. Whatever. Whatever. whatever way you come up to memorize them, that's how you memorize them. And then what we did is we finished up by looking at this. And I actually got you guys to draw this, and it took a very long time. But I said to you guys, if I have this chain, you can actually add the elements to this chain, because we can actually calculate what kind of things would be on this chain. I'm going to do squares because trying to draw pentagons in a hurry is a bit difficult. But yeah, we can add. So for example, T always bonds with A. We know that C always bonds with G. We know that T always bonds with A. We know that A always bonds with T, and C always bonds with G. But the main thing I wanted to talk about, even though there is just only 4 letters, there's only 4 letters, this is still many ways to come up with this. And this is what I finished up at the very end. I said, for example, there were 1,000 ways to write 5 pairs. So see, T, C, T, A, G, right? That is 1 out of 1,000 possible combinations. I could have had T, 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 or C, 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 or T, A, T, A, T, A, or whatever. There are 1,000 different ways to write them, which is huge. It's so huge. There's so many different possible things. So what the lesson here is that I'm trying to say is that even though our language is very small, we can still write a lot. Patty, I just saw that you just joined us. I have to remind me later to change the role, but at the moment we're just going back over what we did last lesson. So yeah, that was the main things that we talked about. I thought I added the polymer section to this somewhere, but looks like oh, there it is. DNA is a polymer, a chain of molecules. Beautiful. Now, what are we talking about today? Well, today we're going to talk about mutations. So what is a mutation and how does it work? Before we get too deep into this, I did want to just talk about this. Use this image photo to explain the connection between DNA and traits. Firstly, I just want to start off by, I just want to just get a quick thing. Can someone tell me either what are traits or give me an example of a trait? You can either say it out loud or you can put it in the chat, either or. What are traits or what is an example of a trait?
Sir,
Yes.
isn't it like the characteristics that someone has?
Yeah, characteristics. So they're like
They're like the hair, the eye. Like
what do you mean by hair?
the hair color
Yeah.
or eye color and stuff.
So hair color is one.
Types of blood.
Blood type. Yeah, features is another. I like that. Body characteristics of features. I like that. I'm going to add that. That's what someone else suggested. Let's go with 2 more and then we'll finish up. What's 2 more? 2 more things that can be affected by DNA. By what are the 2 traits?
Earlobe size.
Earlobe size. Yep. One more.
Eye color.
Eye color. Sure. So these are all traits. Now I feel like one of the things that I haven't done with you guys so far is I think I've talked about this a lot, but I don't think I've actually really I think I mentioned it a lot, but I don't think I've actually discussed it. And then I said, you've got DNA, right? It's good DNA. And I said, DNA affects these traits. But I don't think I actually said how DNA affects these traits. And it does through proteins. Now, proteins are essentially, they're essentially building molecules. Building, we'll go with building. We'll go with living building blocks. Let's go with that. So all organisms contain proteins, and these proteins are the living building blocks. You guys might remember from last year where you looked at carbohydrates and fats, and proteins were one of the big ones that we use to repair muscle and to grow taller and stuff like that. And that's exactly what it is and to grow muscles. Like proteins are the building blocks. So that's when we talk about proteins, that's what they are. There's a reason that I'm putting this slide at the very start. One, because it gives me a good chance to sort of just see what you guys know. But yeah, if there is a problem in this chain, if the DNA is not able to make the correct proteins, then you will not get the features that you show up. And obviously specific DNA. So it's like if you want to have, if you have got blue eyes, then that's one DNA telling one protein to make blue eyes. But if you've got a different DNA, you might get a different protein, and that might lead to brown eyes instead of blue eyes. So knowing this chain is relatively important. I haven't got a pencil here because I didn't think it was like something that you guys would need to jot down, but I wanted to show you guys it. So now let's talk about, well, before we get to our question, which is how do mutations affect the body, let's talk about, well, I just wanted to quickly touch on this idea of karyotyping. Again, there's no pencil here. And the reason why there's no pencil is because the head of science, Ms. Gunter, said this is not something that you guys will be assessed on in the test. But I wanted to show you guys this just because it helps make some of this stuff make a little bit more sense. First, I want to talk to you guys about a karyotype. A karyotype is an image that shows all of an individual's chromosomes. Humans have 46 chromosomes in all their cells, and they have 2 copies of each chromosome. So let's count them. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I don't think there's, I don't know if there's going to be actually 46. What do you guys think? Whoops. Maybe 24, 25, 26, 27. 20. Actually, looks like there will be.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's 46.
Okay, so I will point out though that even though there are 36, where do all of these? Notice how they are all in pairs, except the last 2, which is a weird pair. So if I look at the pairs, because there are 46, there is going to be 20. So there are going to be 23 pairs of these all throughout the whole thing. This last 23rd pair is a bit odd. And the reason that it's a bit odd is because one of these is very, very short. The other one is very, very long. I'm not going to go into too much detail about why. I mean, I could, because the reason I can actually tell you that this is a male, because this chromosome has a special name referred to as X. And this chromosome, because it's so short, we refer to it as Y. Because it's an X and a Y, we know this is a male rather than a female. Male chromosomes that are the same size and shape, contain the same genes, are called homologous chromosomes. Now, why am I doing this? I'm going to show you. Here's a female's chromosomes. As you can see, 2 X chromosomes, whereas for men, you've got an X chromosome, which is this really long one, and a Y, which is a lot shorter.
So 1 chromosome from the mom and then 1 chromosome from the dad.
Yes, exactly. But I will point this out, that this is the same for all of these. So 1 will always come from the mum and 1 will come from the dad. It's the same for all of these chromosomes, not just these ones. usually what we talk about is a lot of the time we talk about that, but I don't want you guys to think it's like, oh yeah. So that means that, let's just say, you know, this chromosome here has a section on it that deals with your hair is curly or straight. And so that this chromosome, you'll get one from your dad and one from your mum. And so that might both control whether or not you have curly hair or straight hair. So that's part of it. Yeah, all of these are different. All of these are different, but all of these chromosomes are different, but they still come in pairs because one comes from mum and one comes from dad. And even the sex ones are come in pairs. Now, what happens if you get an anomaly? All right, what happens if you get an anomaly? And this is not the same as a mutation, but it is sort of the same as a mutation as well. And I thought this would be a good chance to write this down. I like you guys to talk about chromosomal abnormalities. So certain disorders, can I get you to write this down? If you don't have paper, just write it down on a piece of, on a document or somewhere. Certain disorders can be caused by having the incorrect number of chromosomes. Your job as well. Yes, I'd like you to write this down, please. Your job as well is, after you've written that down, see if you can tell me what is wrong with this karyotype. What is wrong with this picture of the DNA below?
Wait, so can you scroll down a bit? I can't see them all.
That's all of them.
Oh, because there's like a bar there. Can you maybe zoom in on the actual
Oh.
chromosomes?
There's a bar.
Or like just lift it up a bit because you can't see
Yeah.
the bottom ones.
Ugh, man, all right, give me a sec. Hold on. Do. Okay. Okay. Tell me, is this better? Wait. Is this
Yeah,
better?
that's fine now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I can see the abnormality as well.
You reckon one person can see it?
The 3 chromosomes in 20. 3 chromosomes in 21.
Yes, that's the main problem. Paddy goes, there's 2 X chromosomes. I'm like, yeah, but that's fine. That means it's a woman because they've got 2 X's. If it was an X and a Y, then it'll be a man. But there are 3 chromosomes here. Now there should only be 2, so there are 3 instead. As you can see, there's 2. So this person actually has 47 chromosomes. And you might think to yourself, oh, we've got 47 chromosomes. That means you've got more chromosomes than you need, right? That means, yes, this is less than 40. That must mean that the more chromosomes you have, the better, surely, right? More is better. But think about it like this, right? If you have 2 chromosomes, right, you have 2 pieces of DNA that code for each trait, which is going to be a bit of a challenge. They're going to fight a little bit, maybe instead of having perfectly straight hair or perfectly curly hair, you'll end up with something in between, like wavy hair. But if you've got 3 chromosomes coding for a certain trait, then you're going to have a big issue. Now, one of the good questions comes from David. Why is there 3? Why does this one have 3? Well, this is caused by some kind of abnormality when the zygote is formed, when the sperm meets the egg. There have been some kind of abnormality. Maybe the specific sperm had a problem when it was divided, and so it didn't divide properly. maybe when the eggs got fertilized, there was a bit of a problem and one of the extra chromosomes showed up. But what this results in is a chromosomal abnormality. Now, what does this yeah, so it should only have one from mom and one from dad. So this one maybe has two from mom and one from dad, or two from dad and one from mom. And that might be because the egg cell didn't split properly or the sperm cell didn't split properly. Or it might be that when the egg got fertilized, something didn't split properly there. So let's go have a look to see, well, what could happen. So the main condition that many of you guys are probably aware of, yeah, that is scary, but it doesn't happen very often. The main condition in this is essentially one that you guys are familiar with, is Down syndrome. Down syndrome, this karyotype is the karyotype of someone with Down syndrome. This is called, technical name for this, you don't need to know the technical name, but I will tell you it. It's called trisomy. Tri meaning 3. You can also have something called monosomy, which means that instead of having an extra chromosome, you only have one. So for example, you might be missing the 6th chromosome. And so therefore you have 45 chromosomes instead of 46. So
Sir,
yes.
if someone were to have like, instead of the normal amount, instead of having one more, they had 2 more, would that just mean that you get like a new body characteristic?
Yeah. So it might be a symptom of something else.
Okay.
Mind you, I personally think that if you had 2 more extra chromosomes, like I think 1 more chromosome is usually quite detrimental to your health. I think having 2 more might not result in a human being able to be born or exist. It's just like there'd be so much issues going on that it might not work, but I might be wrong. So the symptoms of said Down syndrome, if you don't already know, there is like they're usually, people who said Down syndrome usually have relatively small heads. They usually have dental problems, short ears, and of course they usually have some kind of learning disability as well. So these are, and you know, these this syndrome is just caused by just one extra chromosome. So you can actually tell if you can actually tell if your child is going to have Down syndrome before it's even born by just looking at you can actually test the DNA of the baby. So yeah, and that presents its own issues. So then you could be like, okay, so if you know that you're going to have a baby, test the baby and you find out that that baby's going to have Down syndrome, that presents a bit of what's the word I'm looking for? Ethical dilemma. It's like, okay, is it okay for parents that are going to have a child with Down syndrome to, you know, abort the child? It's like, well, it's not really a baby yet, it's not a human being. But then you can be like, that's where genetics gets a bit iffy. You start to get these types of questions, and then you might be saying, oh, that's okay for Down syndrome, but then you might be like, oh, my child's he's gonna be, you know, like you could have someone that's like, my child is gonna be weak, doesn't have the DNA to be good at maths, so I'm gonna, you know, where do you draw the line? Yeah, I know that's a bit intense, but it's true. It's like you could argue that point. Some other issues that can show up because of too many or too few or weak chromosomes include, so you can have a syndrome where a man ends up with 2 X chromosomes and 1 Y chromosome. Can't remember what the name of this is called. Really annoys me. The reason we say this is a man is because they've still got an X and a Y, but this is again trisomy. You've got too many chromosomes, and this actually ends up with a man with it's usually got small testicles, poor beard growth, usually it's got like slightly feminized physique, and you know, the IQ is a little bit bad. So you can mess around with the sex chromosomes as well. Turner syndrome is the opposite. It's sort of where there is only one X chromosome. So this is a monosomy. This is a person that is missing a chromosome. If you have a look at this one, this is missing an X chromosome. So it's still it's still sort of like a female will be born from this, but you know, the female is infertile. They can't have children. Sometimes they have low hairline, bicuspid aortic valve, so on and so forth. So yeah, these are just some issues that you can have with having too many or too few. This may not be on the Google Classroom because I did change it slightly because I was missing, but it should update automatically after today. I don't know why it hasn't updated already. Hamza suggested one. I don't actually know what that syndrome is, Hamza. But yeah, but if you want to let us know, that'd be. Oh, was that the previous one? Okay, thank you. I didn't actually know. So this is called Kniefler syndrome. Thank you for that. And maybe I just, yeah, okay, cool. So, let's now talk about, well, what happens, right? What happens if like a minor problem happens, rather than instead a whole chromosome gets lost? Not necessarily. Someone just asked if they have some of these. Just because you have some of these traits doesn't mean that you have this syndrome. If you have this syndrome, though, you may not be able to have it. Again, CSIS 45, so you're missing a chromosome. So you would have to check that. Let's go have a look at this, though. Mutations. So this is the big point of today's lesson. This is the whole purpose of today's topic, and we're running low on time, but we've had some really good questions. So someone says, are you sure about that? And what I'm trying to say is, David, just because someone has some of the traits doesn't mean that they've got that syndrome. I'm just sort of saying that you would have to actually, just because they've got a low hairline doesn't mean that they've got that syndrome. You would actually have to look at their DNA and actually look at how many chromosomes they have before you can actually know. You can't, there are many things. It's like you might look at someone and say, oh, clearly you have this disease, but you have to actually test it. So mutation, that's what we're going to be talking about now. And we've got like 10 minutes to cover this, so we haven't got much time, so let's go through this quickly. A mutation is a change in the order of bases along the DNA strand. Mutations can occur spontaneously or be caused by a mutagen. So here we've got and unfortunately, for some reason, some of it's been cut off, but that's okay. But on the top, we've got a copy of a DNA sequence. We've got TAA, CTG, CAGGT. But on the bottom, we've got TAA, CC. As you can see, right, instead of this being a T, it's actually a C. So that means that there has been a mutation. Mutation, again, meaning, as Zane said at the very start, a change. There is a change in the DNA. Now, mutations can have one of three things happen. Yes, I'd like you to write this down, please. You don't need to draw the sequence. You can if you want. If you do want to draw the sequence, I would just keep it simple. I would go, whoopsies. I would go TAAC, TAAG, and then I would go, and then mutates, and then I would go TATG or something like that, you know? Now mutations, what do they mean? Mutations can either have no effect. So you could have a mutation, right? A cell in your body, or even a whole section of cells could have a completely mutation, and you may never know that that mutation exists. That's completely fine. That might happen, right? Or it could cause an abnormal protein. Abnormal meaning not normal. So it might make a not normal protein rather than a normal protein. So instead of making the normal protein, like maybe let's just say you've got a protein that makes your skin, maybe you've got a protein that makes your skin brown, and then suddenly it doesn't work very well. You might have someone that, you know, has lighter skin, or it might stop the protein from forming at all. So it might actually cut that protein, and then you might have someone with albinism, you know, that's completely white because they can't make any pigment because that protein doesn't work. So that's the main thing here. I'm going to keep this slide up for another 30 seconds because I do want to change the slide in a second. But yeah, in about 30 seconds, sorry. But yeah, but that's the main thing. Mutations, and sometimes, by the way, mutations just happen randomly. They just happen randomly. But your body does have ways to detect whether or not something's not working. But sometimes these mutations just, you know, keep existing. So just be aware of that. Mutation, you might have a mutation that stops, you may have a mutation that stops your cells would normally switch off and die. You might have a mutation that stops telling your cells to die. And so they keep forming. And that's actually how you can get cancer. This cancer can be, doesn't have to be, but can be a form of a mutation that stops cells from dying. And so then that mutation keeps getting passed around. And then, yeah. So,
I was hoping that when you said like it stops cells to die, it just causes us to like grow really tall.
yeah, that'd be cool. But unfortunately, yeah, no, it's depressing. I'm sorry. So what are these mutagens? What can cause this thing to happen? So I wanted to put mutagens are agents that can cause DNA mutations. For example, and I want you to pick two of these. And then that's going to be the last major slide that I need you to copy down. The next slide, it hasn't got anything to copy down. I just put the next slide up because it was a cute sort of picture. But yeah, let's get this idea here. Mutagens are agents that cause DNA mutation. So radiation is one of them. UV radiation from the sun, whenever you get a sunburn, right, that's your cells, you know, in trauma, but there is a chance that one of those cells might mutate. It might have the DNA in it change, so it doesn't work as it used to. X-rays are another way. Any form of radiation. So if you spend too long next to a radioactive nuclear reactor, then that would be quite bad for you. There are some chemicals, so carcinogens, processed foods, cosmetics, these are all, you know, really bad ways that you can also, cleaning products as well are also ways that you can chemically change your DNA. If you have too much, you know, your DNA can get altered and then it just doesn't work anymore. And the last one is viruses and bacteria. Of course, viruses and bacteria. Viruses' main job is in fact to get into your cells and change your DNA. So it makes sense that if you were hit with like a virus, then it might go, your DNA might get completely swapped. But bacteria can also change it as well. So that's the last sort of slide. I've got a little bit of something else that I want to talk about, but I'll keep this up for I'll keep it up for about 45 seconds longer. Guys, you don't need to write down every single thing here. I just want you to write two. So you could be like, oh, cool. For example, UV, you could just write X-rays and.
So once we finish that, can we go to our next class?
I just want to talk about one last thing, Darcy, and I'll do that in 15 seconds, but because I want to give people a little bit of time. But then, yeah, once I finish that, then you can go to your next class. What's your next class? What are you so eager to get to?
English, but yeah, because it's just already started.
She's already started. What do you mean she's already started? Oh,
Well,
she's
I'm-
creating. Fair enough. Well, I'm going to jump to this last slide. Here we go. Last slide. How do mutations cause disease? I've already covered this idea because I already did this here. The idea is a normal gene can make a normal protein. Yay, everyone's happy. But a mutated gene can either make an abnormal protein that doesn't work properly, or no protein at all. And it even shows you, hey, look, this gene doesn't work, this DNA doesn't work, so it's not going to make something that works properly. So that, ladies and gents, is my lesson on mutation.